The stars shimmered like scattered diamonds across the velvet blackness of space, untouched and unchallenged except by the Varn Dominion. For 2 centuries, their fleet had swept across galaxies like a storm. Planet by planet, system by system, they took everything, resources, lives, cultures. The Varn didn't bargain, they didn't negotiate, they conquered swiftly and without mercy. No species had ever resisted for long. Some tried diplomacy, some tried hiding, others fought and were erased from existence so completely their names were forgotten. But Earth was different, not smarter, not stronger, just different. On the outer edge of the Perseus Arm, in a dusty, overlooked solar system, a warship drifted cold, silent, forgotten by its own people. The UHS Leviathan. It was a relic of an old Earth war, one nobody talked about anymore. Massive and angular, covered in armor thick enough to block most deep scans, it was believed lost during the Martian uprising 80 years earlier. But it wasn't lost, it was waiting. Inside the dim command center, Commander Kale Ren sat in silence, staring at the holographic interface blinking faintly before him. He was lean, gray-haired, and hard-eyed, the kind of man who had seen too many battles and trusted too little. "Status?" he asked, not turning his head. "Power at 84%, weapon systems warmed," replied a voice smooth, feminine, but artificial. "The ship's AI named Vera. One Varn scout vessel entered detection range 5 minutes ago. They haven't seen us yet." Kyle rubbed his jaw. "Of course they haven't. They don't expect humans to fight anymore. They think we gave up." "They're not entirely wrong," Vera said. Kyle didn't smile. "They forgot us." He stood, boots echoing against the steel floor. Around him, the bridge crew came to life, not many of them, just 12 people, all that remained from the original crew. Some were barely more than kids when they signed on. Now they were all warriors, bound by one mission, not survival, not diplomacy, payback. The Varn hadn't even meant to invade Earth directly. They didn't need to. They crushed the colonies around it, blocked trade routes, and left Earth to starve. The rest of the galaxy watched and did nothing. Humanity had become irrelevant, weak, obsolete. But they had forgotten rage. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology or its numbers. It was what happened when you pushed them too far, when you took everything from them, when the only thing left was the fire that burned in a broken soul. "Bring us up," Kale ordered. The ship moved slow and deliberate from behind a small moon. For the first time in decades, the Leviathan showed its face. Its hull was scarred, its systems outdated, but its soul was alive. The Varn scout ship saw them at last. "Too late." "Target locked," Vera said. Kyle gave a single nod. "Fire." A pulse beam roared through the void, pure white energy that sliced through the Varn ship like paper. There was no time for shields, no call for backup, just death. Kale stared at the screen as the Varn ship shattered, not out of satisfaction but memory. He remembered his brother's last words before a Varn raid took their colony. He remembered the messages from Earth begging for help that never came. "We're not finished," he said. "That was just a scout, the real fleet's coming." "They'll bring hundreds of ships," Vera noted. "Good," Kyle turned. "Let them come. We'll show them what humans do when we've got nothing left to lose." Outside, the darkness of space was shifting. Stars flickered oddly, shadows moving between them. The Varn were coming, and this time humanity wouldn't run. The wreckage of the Varn scout ship still drifted in space, glowing faintly with residual plasma as its remains spread in a wide arc. It was the first Varn vessel to be destroyed by human hands in nearly 70 years, but Kale knew the price of that victory. It wouldn't go unnoticed. The Varn would not take the loss lightly, they never did. Inside the Leviathan, tension rippled like static through the corridors. There were no cheers, no celebrations, only a quiet readiness like the calm before a tidal wave. Everyone on board knew what came next. They had declared war. Kyle stood by the panoramic viewport near the command bridge, watching the fragments of the destroyed scout vanish into the endless dark. He felt nothing, not pride, not vengeance, only the weight of inevitability. He had fired the first shot. Now there would be no turning back. Behind him, footsteps approached. "You should get some rest, Commander," said Lieutenant Aaron Voss, the ship's tactical officer. Young, with sharp green eyes and a temper barely kept in check, Aaron had grown up in one of the outer colonies before it fell to the Varn. His family hadn't made it out. Kyle didn't turn around. "I sleep when there's no one left to kill us." Aaron exhaled slowly. "The Varn destroy everything they see, sir, we all know that, but taking the first shot means we painted a target on our backs. You think Earth will thank us for that?" Kyle finally turned, eyes locked on Aaron's. "I don't care if Earth thanks us. I care that the Varn know they're not untouchable, that we can bleed them." Aaron didn't argue, he just nodded once and left. Kyle moved to the tactical table and tapped a few controls. A star map lit up showing the local sector. The Varn fleet had been spotted moving through nearby systems over the past 6 months. They didn't travel all at once. Instead, their ships advanced like fingers, probing and squeezing until civilizations shattered between them. But now they'd been bitten. Vera's voice echoed through the bridge speakers. Long-range scans are detecting 3 vessels exiting subspace on the far edge of the system. Kyle's head snapped towards the center of the room. Size. 2 destroyers, 1 cruiser, all Varn design. How long until they reach weapons range? 42 minutes. Kyle's fists clenched. Sound battle stations bring up kinetic shields and charge rail cannons. The lights on the bridge dimmed slightly, flashing red as the alert blared through the Leviathan. All across the ship, crew members raced into position. Engineering sealed off its lower decks, gunnery crews strapped into exosuits, medics prepped for casualties. This wasn't going to be like the scout ship, that was execution. This was survival. Down in the engine bay, Mira Halden checked coolant levels on the primary reactor. She'd been just 16 when her home station was gutted by the Varn. She still remembered the smell of melted bulkheads and the sight of her sister's body floating lifeless through the emergency hatch. She had sworn she'd never let another family fall without a fight. Now 26, Mira was the Leviathan's chief systems engineer, a miracle for someone once written off as just another refugee. "Plasma containment stable," she muttered into her headset. "Reactors green, backup power routed to shields." "You ready for this, Mira?" asked Kor, the assistant engineer, his voice shaking slightly. She looked up at him with dead calm. "I've been ready for 10 years. In the gunnery chamber on Deck 4, Sergeant Jonah Reese loaded the high-velocity sabot rounds into the rotating chamber of the rail cannon. The shells were massive, each one capable of cracking hull armor at near light-speed velocity, but the Leviathan didn't have many of them. Every shot had to count. Jonah ran a hand through his buzz-cut hair and murmured, "For my wife, for Caleb's, for everyone they burned." Across from him, another crew member whispered a prayer, their hands trembling. No one believed they would all survive, but survival wasn't the point. Making the Varn feel fear, that was, back on the bridge, the countdown ticked. The Varn ships were getting closer. "Enemy vessels now within long-range missile envelope," Vera announced. "Do they see us yet?" Kyle asked. "They are scanning, no response yet." Kale stared at the glowing representations of the enemy ships, sleek, dark, almost organic in shape. Varn design always seemed to mock the mechanical harshness of human engineering. Where humans used raw power and plating, the Varn used elegance and horror. Their ships moved like predators through deep water. "Target the cruiser," Kale said. "We hit the biggest one first." "Yes, Commander," Vera responded. "Missiles away in 3, 2, 1. From beneath the ship, the missile bays opened like hungry mouths. 4 torpedoes shot out into the void, streaking toward the Varn cruiser in perfect silence. It took only seconds for the Varn to respond. The enemy cruiser's hull shimmered with light as energy barriers flared to life. Defensive turrets rotated and opened fire, striking down 2 of the incoming torpedoes. But the other 2 hit hard. Explosions rippled across the cruiser's port side. Alarms and screams filled the Varn vessel, but it wasn't destroyed, only wounded. "They're powering weapons," Vera said coldly, returning fire. Kyle gripped the railing, brace for impact. The space around the Leviathan lit up like a storm. Plasma bolts and beam weapons screamed across the void. The ship rocked violently as the first blast hit their forward shields, sending arcs of energy skittering down the corridors. "We've lost 12% shielding on the bow," Mira shouted through the comms. "Keep rerouting power, patch the damn holes," Kyle yelled back. The 2 destroyers now flanked the Leviathan, firing in synchronized patterns. They weren't used to resistance, but they were efficient, calculating, and merciless. "We need to thin the pack," Kale growled. "Target the starboard destroyer, all rail guns." Rail cannons opened up with a thunderous boom, the recoil shaking the entire ship. A glowing slug punched through the void and crashed directly into the destroyer's command pod. It split like glass. The Varn destroyer spiraled, bleeding fire and debris, before vanishing in a final, silent explosion. Cheers erupted across the Leviathan, short-lived, desperate, half-disbelieving. But Kale's face stayed hard. "We're not done yet," he muttered. The remaining destroyer and the cruiser regrouped, now moving into tighter formation. Their attacks became more focused, hammering the weakened shield sectors. Shields failing on port side, Vera warned. Rotate the hull, expose the fresh panels, Kale ordered. Bring us under them. I want full ventral barrage on my mark. The ship groaned as it rotated, maneuvering like a beast wounded but still dangerous. From the belly of the Leviathan, all remaining torpedo launchers fired in a devastating spread. One torpedo punched through the destroyer's engine module. A second sliced through its weapons array. The ship twisted violently, then cracked in half. The cruiser hesitated. For the first time in known galactic history, a Varn warship backed away from a human vessel. Kyle's voice dropped to a growl. No, you don't get to leave. Pursuit, Vera asked. Full burns bring her downs. Engines screamed as the Leviathan surged forward. Rail guns opened again, pounding the cruiser with a fury born of extinction and memory. Bit by bit, the Varn shields collapsed. The hull split open. Fires consumed the decks. Kyle watched as the cruiser died, silent and slow. And then nothing, no more ships, just wreckage. Silence returned to the bridge. Vera's voice broke it. Sector is clear, no signs of further enemy presence for now. No one moved, no one spoke. They had won 3 Varn ships destroyed, a miracle. Kyle leaned over the console and whispered, now they know we're not extinct, we're not afraid. He looked to the crew. Now we make them remember us. It had been 37 hours since the last Varn cruiser exploded into the void, and the wreckage still drifted silently like a graveyard in motion. The Leviathan floated amid the remains, its scarred hull groaning under the strain of battle damage but still intact. Inside, a fragile calm had settled, not from peace but from anticipation. Kyle Ren hadn't left the bridge. He stood motionless, staring at the tactical screen that showed no new hostiles, just black space and debris. The Varn had retreated, but that wasn't their nature. That wasn't how they operated. They weren't afraid of anything, which meant something worse was coming. Commander, Vera spoke softly. Crew requested a brief. Morale needs stabilization. Kyle blinked slowly and turned toward the center of the bridge. Gather everyone in the mess hall. I'll speak to them directly. Vera's voice echoed across the Leviathan. All crew report to the primary mess hall for mission debrief. 10 minutes later, Kale stood on a makeshift platform in the mess. The room was filled with weary faces, men and women smeared with grease and sweat. Some carried burns, others nursed broken ribs or fractured arms wrapped hastily in medical foam. But none had the look of defeat. These were survivors, fighters, the forgotten children of a dying civilization who had just bloodied the nose of a galactic empire. Kyle's eyes swept over them before he spoke. We were never supposed to win, he began, voice low but clear. Every military strategist on Earth said that fighting the Varn was suicide. They said we should stay hidden, let them pass, hope for mercy. A few people snorted bitterly. They all knew what mercy from the Varn looked like. Kyle continued. We destroyed 3 Varn warships in less than an hour. That hasn't been done by any species in over 200 years. But make no mistake, they will come back, stronger, angrier. We have just made ourselves the #1 target of the Dominion. Silence fell over the room. Now here's the part they didn't expect, Kyle said, stepping forward. We're not going to run. We're not going to hide in asteroid belts or wait for Earth Command to send help they'll never send. We're going to hit them again and again until the Varn know that Earth may be quiet, but she is not dead. There was a pause, then a voice from the crowd, Mira Holden's, cut through the silence. Where to next? Kale gave a grim nod. The Rim colonies. Gasps filled the room. Someone muttered, they're gone. The Varn leveled them. Not all of them, Kyle replied. There are survivors scattered, hiding in underground ruins, derelict spaceports, and if they're out there, they need hope, they need a symbol. He looked around the room. They need to know someone's fighting back. The mess hall erupted into murmurs. Not all were enthusiastic. Fear lingered under the surface, raw and justified, but Kyle didn't need them all to be brave. He needed them to believe just enough to keep going. He left the platform without another word. He'd said enough. In the command center, Kyle met with Aaron Voss and Mira, who had joined the briefing late with her arm wrapped in a fresh splint. Aaron was first to speak. You really think we can rally colonies? Half of them don't even know we're alive. That's why we go, Kale replied. Broadcasts open channels, tell the galaxy we're not just alive, we're armed. Mira leaned against the console. The ship's in rough shape, reactor stress is at 74%, shield relays are burned out in 3 sections, we barely survived the last battle. Can you fix it? Maybe, she said, but I need time and parts. We can't fight another cruiser in this condition. Kyle nodded slowly, then we don't go looking for a fight, not yet. Aaron arched a brow. You just told the whole crew we're going on the offensive. Kyle smiled faintly. I did, but I didn't say when. First we regroup, rearm, then we strike. Mira crossed her arms. Where? Kale pointed to a dot on the star map, barely a speck tucked between a gas giant and a dying sun. Signar Drift. Aaron frowned. A salvage field. That place is a graveyard. Exactly, ships from a dozen wars, old and new tech from every corner of the sector. If we want parts, we'll find them there. And the Varn won't expect us to go poking through the garbage they already picked through. Mira glanced at Aaron, then back to Kale. All right then, and we'd better get moving before they realize we're not dead. The journey to Signar Drift took 11 hours through subspace lanes. The crew used the time to repair what they could. Hull plates were welded by hand, power conduits were rerouted through backup nodes, even food rations were inventoried and stretched. It was during this time that Kale found himself walking alone through the crew quarters, watching his people work in silence. Some sat hunched over engine coils, others stitched uniforms, but none of them looked like soldiers. They looked like ordinary people stuck in a war they didn't choose. He paused outside a sealed chamber marked with red lights. Medbay. Inside lay Sergeant Jonah Reese unconscious. He'd taken a piece of shrapnel to the chest during the last rail gun volley. The medic said he'd live, but just barely. Kyle stared at him through the glass. Jonah had been one of the first to volunteer when the Leviathan was resurrected from its grave orbit. The man had lost his wife to a Varn raid on Jupiter outpost. She died in his arms. Now he lay still, hooked to machines, still breathing but not present. Kale turned away before his thoughts could wander too far. Signar Drift appeared like a ghost town in the black, a vast tangle of broken ships and twisted satellites drifting in slow orbit around a burnt-out star. Most of the hulks were scavenged long ago, their systems stripped and sold. But deeper in the field there were still wrecks untouched, too damaged, too risky, or simply forgotten. The Leviathan threaded its way carefully into the debris field. Scanners picking up usable power cores and plating in grid sector 4B, Vera said. Kyle nodded. Mira prep a salvage team. Aaron deploy defensive turrets. I don't trust this silence. It took only 20 minutes for the crew to reach the derelict battleship Mira had marked. It was old, maybe 100 years, and marked with the fatting emblem of the Kari Alliance, a species wiped out during the first Varn expansion. Mira led the team aboard. The corridors were dark, cold, and silent. What a beautiful tomb, she whispered, brushing dust off a half-buried console. Core chuckled nervously. Yeah, just hope we don't join them. They salvaged what they could, reactor coolant lines, shield emitters, even a functioning med drone. But just as they were preparing to leave, Mira stopped. What's this? She said, pulling back a shattered wall panel. Behind it was a black case, sealed tight. She tapped it, no response. Manual override required. Bring it back, she told the team. Whatever it is, someone wanted it hidden. Back on the Leviathan, Kale watched as Mira placed the case on the tactical table. What do you think's inside? She asked. Something dangerous or valuable or both. Kale opened the override panel and entered a bypass sequence. The case hissed open. Inside was a data core, ancient, alien in design, glowing faintly. Aaron stepped back. That's not human tech. Kyle stared at it. No, just give us an edge. Mira's eyes widened. You think it's Varn? Kyle looked at her. I think we just found their secrets. And for the first time in days, he smiled, not with hope but with something far more dangerous. Intent. The alien data core sat at the center of the Leviathan's command table like a dormant heart, pulsing with faint violet light. Everyone on the bridge had gone silent the moment Kyle opened the case. The glow felt unnatural, almost sentient, as if the device were aware it had been uncovered. Mira didn't move, her arms were crossed tight, her posture guarded. I don't like it, she said flatly. We don't even know if that thing is safe to touch. Aaron tilted his head, eyes narrowed at the odd, fluid-like symbols etched into the core's surface. I've seen similar tech during recon on New Phara, Varn outposts. This looks like some kind of neural architecture, not a weapon, a memory vault. Kale nodded slowly. Vera, can you read it? A pause, unknown language detected. Symbol sets resemble Varn root dialects, but syntax suggests a corrupted form, possibly pre-Dominion. There's risk of viral corruption if interfaced directly. Risk we're going to take, Kyle replied. Isolate the connection in a quarantine loop. I want everything inside that thing, every byte, every map, every log, anything that helps us hit the Varn where it hurts. Understood, Commander, Vera said, beginning interface in sandbox mode. The data core glowed brighter. Across the bridge, the lights flickered for a moment. A sound like static, no, like whispering, passed through the comms, soft but unmistakable. Then it was gone. Kyle's jaw tightened, everyone out except command staff. Mira lingered, you sure about this? He nodded, you said it yourself, someone wanted this hidden. That means it's valuable, possibly dangerous but definitely not useless. As the non-essential personnel cleared the bridge, Vera's voice returned, this time clipped and filtered through distortion. Commander, the data core contains a fragment of a lost communication hub, nonlinear structure, temporal echoes. Kale frowned, explain. It speaks in loops, redundancies. It's not just data, it's a recording of thought. A Varn mind, possibly ancient. I'm extracting patterns now. Suddenly, the hollow screen bloomed to life with star charts, hundreds of them, flickering rapidly as Vera translated pieces of the alien encryption. Aaron stepped closer. Wait a second, that's the Dominion's spine, their core expansion route. He pointed to a cluster of red-marked systems. These are their control nodes, industrial hubs, logistical pillars, the places they never let outsiders near. Kyle's eyes locked on the screen. How up-to-date is this? Vera responded, estimate 18 to 23 years old. However, key structures remain unchanged. Varn doctrine values stability over speed. Their power centers move slowly, if at all. Mira let out a low whistle. You're saying we could strike their heart? Kyle nodded, not yet, but we can start with their veins. The bridge went quiet again. Aaron, ever the skeptic, broke it first. We'd need more than one ship. Even with this map, we're a skeleton crew on a war relic. Then we find more, Kyle said simply. Survivors, scavengers, pirates, anyone the Dominion crushed but didn't kill. We give them something no one else has, an actual shot at hurting the Varn. Mira crossed her arms. And if they don't listen, or worse, if they betray us. Kyle didn't hesitate, then we bury them with the rest. Later that cycle, deep in engineering, Mira sat cross-legged beside the salvaged reactor coils. Sweat beaded her brow despite the chill. The data core's encryption had haunted her ever since she saw it. There was something unnatural about how it reacted, like it was watching. Core entered, carrying a toolkit and a half-eaten protein bar. You really think the commander's plan is going to work? Mira looked up, brushing dust off her hands. Doesn't matter what I think, we've already started, there's no turning back. Core crouched beside her. I mean, it's one ship against a galactic war machine. She gave him a sideways glance. So was the first flame against the dark, but it still burned. Meanwhile, Kale secluded himself in his private quarters, seated in front of a dusty wall screen. A message sat unsent in his queue, labeled only to Earth Command. It had been there for weeks. He hadn't recorded it. He hadn't tried. He already knew the response. You are acting without authority. Cease operations immediately. Do not antagonize the Dominion. He didn't need Earth's permission to fight for what they abandoned. Instead, he opened a new message. This one was shorter, simpler, directed to an encrypted frequency known only in the underworld. The signal loop, a pirate broadcast net outlawed in every known system. He recorded, this is Commander Kale Wren of the UHS Leviathan. If you're receiving this, you've either survived a Varn attack or lost someone to one. We just killed 3 of their warships. I've got coordinates, I've got a warship, and I've got a cause. If you've got a ship, a crew, or just a reason to fight, find us. No flag, no rules, just vengeance. He sent it across the system, across scattered colonies and lawless outposts. The signal traveled like wildfire. Not everyone believed it. Some thought it was a trap. Others assumed it was propaganda from another dying rebel cell. But a few believed. In the Raven Belt, a smuggler captain named Vex listened with one metal eye twitching. He'd lost his entire crew to a Varn patrol 5 years earlier and had been hiding among asteroids since. He rewound the message 5 times before slamming a fist on his console. About damn time, he muttered. On a mining moon near Orsi 9, a pack of ex-soldiers long abandoned by the planetary militia gathered around a flickering hollow. When Kale's message ended, their leader, a scarred woman named Ilya Thorne, stood up and simply said, prepare the ship. Back in Signar Drift, as the Leviathan powered down its salvage beams and turned toward the edge of the system, Vera gave a new update. Receiving multiple signal responses on encrypted line. 17 vessels en route to rendezvous coordinates. Kale didn't smile, but his eyes lit with grim satisfaction. Then we have a fleet. Aaron raised a brow, a fleet of outlaws, scavengers, and ghosts. Kale turned to him, better than cowards. The rendezvous point was a dead zone, an old mining station orbiting a shattered moon long abandoned and off the charts. Perfect. As the Leviathan arrived, one by one other ships emerged from subspace, a ragtag flotilla. Nothing uniform, nothing organized, but dangerous. There were freighters turned warships, salvaged corvettes, old Earth patrol cruisers from centuries past, even one ship bearing the jagged insignia of the outlawed Martian resistance. Kyle stood on the command deck watching them come. Mira joined him. "That's 17 captains who want blood," she said. Kyle's reply was low and certain, "Then let's give them a war." The abandoned station orbiting the shattered moon was nothing more than rusted metal and old ghost code running on scraps of power. It had once been a fueling depot for asteroid miners before the Varn swept through the sector. Now it served a new purpose, a war council for the damned. 17 ships drifted around the station like vultures circling a corpse. Their designs were mismatched, their power signatures erratic, but they radiated something stronger than military coordination fury. The kind that refused to fade even after decades of silence. Inside the command chamber of the Leviathan, Kale stood in front of a long table flickering with unstable hollow projections. Around him, captains from each ship had gathered, pirates, smugglers, ex-soldiers, mercenaries. None of them looked like diplomats. That was the point. Vex, the smuggler captain with a cybernetic eye, leaned forward. "You're telling us you found a Varn data core, and instead of selling it to the highest bidder or running, you opened it. You're insane." Kyle didn't flinch. "I'm alive, and so are my people." Ilya Thorne, the scar-faced ex-commander from Orsi 9, crossed her arms. "How do we know you didn't fake those kill claims? Anyone can detonate a scrap ship and edit the footage." Kyle hit a button. The hollow display shifted to live footage of 3 massive wrecks, each one unmistakably Varn. The damage was real. The weapon signatures were human. No one spoke for a long moment. Kyle used the silence. The Varn don't expect resistance anymore. They've grown arrogant, careless. They think they've erased fear from the stars. What they don't realize is that fear can turn into rage. He moved around the table, his voice growing lower. "I don't care what side you used to be on, Earth, Mars, or the Void. If you lost someone to the Dominion, if they took your people, your world, your future, then you're with me. We hit them where it hurts. Their supply chains, their drone factories, their sleeper fleets." Vex let out a sharp breath. "And when they send a dreadnought, when their entire battle group shows up." Kyle looked him dead in the eye. "Then we send it to hell." Silence again. This time it felt heavier. Ilya finally nodded. "What's your first target?" Kyle tapped the display again. A star system blinked red. Volnax Prime, outer colony used as a fuel depot and staging ground for Varn cruisers. If we take it, we cut a vein feeding their eastern front. Mira spoke from the side. "There's a weak point in their orbital relay. We analyze the data from the core. If we overload the array, their long-range comms go dark for 6 hours. That gives us time to strike." Vex grinned. "Now you're talking. Let's light something on fire." In the next few hours, the old station buzzed with activity. Fighters were refueled, torpedoes assembled from scavenged parts, hulls patched with makeshift plating. These ships weren't built for full-scale war, but they didn't have to be. They were fast and angry. On the Leviathan, Kyle met Mira in engineering. "You ready for this?" he asked. She didn't look up from her console. "No, but I stopped waiting to be ready the day the Varn killed my sister." Kale nodded. "We only need the Leviathan to get us through the relay. Once we disable it, the others will strike in waves." Mira closed the panel and leaned against the wall. "You know they'll counterattack hard. If we're wrong, even a little, we lose more than just ships. We lose momentum." Kyle met her gaze. "Then we don't give them the chance." 2 days later, the fleet emerged from subspace near the edge of the Volnax system. The Varn hadn't seen it coming, not a proper fleet, not a battle group, just broken ships flying like wolves. The relay station was their first target. It floated above Volnax's third moon, a spindly, crab-like structure bristling with sensor towers and comm dishes. 3 Varn patrol frigates orbited it like bored sentries. "Begin attack run," Kyle ordered. The Leviathan surged forward, flanked by two of the faster pirate vessels. As they approached, Vera launched a precise jamming spike into the relay's central node. The entire array went dark. One of the Varn barked over open frequency. System disruption detected. Too late. Rail guns thundered. Plasma torpedoes lit the dark. One Varn frigate exploded within seconds. The other two engaged, but they weren't prepared for the coordination. The ragtag fleet fought like madmen because they were driven not by strategy but fury. Within minutes, the relay was crippled. Kyle's voice rang out over the comms. Strike window open, all units hit Volnex Prime. The fleet descended. Volnex Prime's orbital defenses tried to rally, but their comms were severed, their response fractured. Ground-based cannons fired blindly, missing more often than not. The Leviathan led the charge, blasting a hole through the primary orbital dock. Mira called out from engineering, main reactor stress peaking. We've got 20 minutes before she blows a gasket. More than enough, Kale replied. The fleet rained fire on the fuel silos. Flames erupted from the surface, casting orange light into the black. The Varn garrison attempted to launch fighters, but Vex's ship strafed them mid-deployment, ripping hangars apart. Ilya's corvette landed ground troops volunteers in mismatched armor carrying old rifles and crude grenades. They stormed the base, liberating prisoners and data caches long thought lost. Mira patched into Kale's comms. Sir, we're detecting a new signal. Something's waking up under the surface. Kale froze. What kind of signal? Massive buried sub-facility. I think this isn't just a fuel site, it's a sleeper lab. Kyle's heart dropped. Fall back, pull the ground teams. But it was too late. The ground split open. From beneath the planet's crust, a massive spire rose.